I'm just going to introduce viruses in this video. So remember that there are several different types of acellular agents. So remember that these are microorganisms that do not have a cell. So we've got viruses, which are made out of a protein capsid. And inside that capsid, they have a nucleic acid, which is either DNA or RNA. And then we have satellites, which is just a nucleic acid, and it needs the help of a helper virus in order to multiply and then infect the next cell. And then we have viroids, which is just an infectious piece of RNA. And so far, those have only been found to infect plants. And then we have prions, which are infectious proteins. So there's a big debate among scientists whether viruses are actually alive or not. So let's take a look at this. So here's just a couple of the characteristics of life that I know that you've learned before. And for all of these characteristics of life, bacteria definitely have all of these. So we'll put yes to all of these. And then viruses are going to be kind of a gray area. So viruses obviously do not have a cell. So they just consist of a protein capsid, and then inside of that they've got their nucleic acid, either DNA or RNA. So they do not have a cell. And according to the cell theory, remember that all living organisms are composed of cells. So right there, that would say that viruses are not living organisms. But there's some other things that viruses do that kind of put them in the gray area. Okay, our next characteristic that living organisms do is they have a metabolism, which means they're able to do chemical reactions. And viruses, when they're outside of a cell, nothing's going on inside the virus. There's no chemical reactions. But when the virus infects the cell, it takes over the cell's machinery and directs the cell's enzymes to make more of the virus. So the virus will use the host cell's enzymes to make more virus, and then some of the viruses actually will have their own enzymes that they bring with them and use them to help make more virus. So they will not have a metabolism, no chemical reactions. So we'll say yes, only if they're inside of a cell. Okay, so if they're outside the cell, there's no chemical reactions going on, but if they infect a cell, then they can take over the host cell's enzymes and direct them to make new virus, or they can actually bring in some of their own enzymes to help make new virus as well inside the host cell. Okay, the next characteristic of life is responding to stimuli, and bacteria can do that. So remember we talked about chemotaxis, where they can follow a chemical scent trail. And viruses, do they respond to stimuli? Well, when they're just sitting out by themselves outside of a cell, they do not respond to stimuli. But if they're inside the host cell, it is possible for them to respond to a stimulus. So if you think about the bacteriophages, the temperate bacteriophages, so remember that they can sense when the bacteria cell is not doing well, and they will then go into the lytic cycle, make new virus, and then go find another bacterial cell to infect, because that cell that they're infecting right now is going to die, and so they need to go find a new host. So they can respond to stimulus only if they're inside of a cell. Okay, and reproduction. reproducing, bacteria definitely can do that. And viruses can only reproduce if they're inside of a host cell. So if you have virus just sitting out on a table, they will not be able to reproduce and make more virus. So they have to be inside the host cell, take over the host cell's machinery in order to reproduce and make more virus. And bacteria can definitely evolve. So we see that with the evolution of antibacterial resistance, and viruses can also evolve as well. So we've seen that definitely with COVID. So evolution can occur, but only if they're inside of a cell. So we can get mutations when the viruses are replicating inside the cell, and that can then get passed on, and then we can get new versions or new strains of that particular virus. So you can see that viruses don't have all of the characteristics of life, but there are some gray areas. They do some things that living organisms do when they do infect the cell. Okay, and then the other thing to mention about viruses is that they are obligate intracellular parasites. Obligate just means required. Intracellular, intra means within or inside, so they're required to be inside the cells, and they're parasites. Remember, a parasite is something that benefits while the other organism is harmed. Okay, and then just some vocabulary words: a virion or a virus. That's just the complete, fully developed viral particle. And a virus just consists of DNA or RNA as the genetic material, and that's going to be enclosed by the protein coat, the capsid. And then some of the viruses will have an envelope that covers the capsid, which we'll look at in just a minute. And then we talked about them being obligate intracellular parasites. So they do require a host cell to infect in order to reproduce. So viruses can either be non-enveloped or enveloped. So with a non-enveloped virus, we just have the protein capsid here in blue on the outside, and then inside we've got the genetic material, which would either be DNA or RNA. And then the envelope virus, down here on the bottom, we've got the protein capsid in blue, and they've cut it open so you can see the DNA or RNA inside there, the nucleic acid. And then on the outside, we've got this yellow envelope. So that would be an envelope virus. We have found viruses that infect all three of the domains. The bacterial viruses are called bacteriophages, or phages for short. We also have viruses that infect the archaea, and you can see over here an archaeocell cell called Sophilobus, and this species like to live in volcanic areas. And just like the archaea have some strange shapes, even their viruses have strange shapes. So you can see this virus over here attaching to this Sophilobus cell, and it's kind of a spindle shape, which is a strange shape for a virus. And then all of our eukaryotic kingdoms, they also have viruses that infect them. So we have animal viruses, plant viruses, protist viruses, and also fungal viruses as well. And as far as the size of viruses, they range in size from 20 nanometers to 1,000 nanometers. And remember, a nanometer is a billionth of a meter. So they're pretty small. And most viruses, you're going to need an electron microscope to see them. So most of them are very small. You can't see them with a light microscope. Although there are a few that are large enough that you can see with a light microscope. For example, the smallpox virus is big enough that you could see with a light microscope. But all the others are going to be very small, and you're going to have to use an electron microscope to see those viruses.